EduMagicians, welcome to the EduMagic podcast with your host, Dr. Sam Fesich. Dr. Sam is a professor of education, author of EduMagic, and a pumpkin spice latte fan. This podcast is designed for pre-service teachers. Remember, friends, teaching doesn't begin at graduation, but during that first class at 8 a.m. Let's get this party started.
I'm Andrew Murata, host of the Education, Leadership, and Beyond podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you are listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
These bonus episodes are based on my new course designed with Candace Green called Interview 101 Teacher Edition. In this course, we go from getting started with interviews. For example, where do you even find a job posting? To application, resume, cover letter, first round interview, second round interview, third round interview, following up, job fairs. We even have a section on body language, 20 most common interview questions that are asked and how to answer them. You want to learn more? Head on over to sfesich.com/courses. There you will find all the information you need to know about Interview 101 Teacher Edition. And I wish you the best of luck during your teaching interview.
So today we're talking all about letters of recommendation. And I don't know about you, but I remember whenever I was an undergrad and having to ask for those is always a little awkward, and you don't know really what to say or what should be included in them, how many you should have, who they should be from. So that's what we're talking about today. And before we jump in, Heather, would you mind sharing about your teaching story?
I got into teaching through an alternative pathway. I was a Teach for America teacher. I got placed in Houston, Texas. It seems like it's been forever now. In 2001, I taught there for 2 years and then moved to San Diego and taught first and second grade at a charter school for 13 years, got my master's, then my doctorate, did some adjunct work, and now I work at National University as their clinical practice coordinator for the state of California.
That's amazing. What a cool story.
Yeah, I really, I just feel fortunate that I got to have so many different experiences and just learn tons along the way.
Right. And it sounds like every experience led to another. And throughout that experience, probably interviewing for some jobs and asking for letters of recommendation. That is my segue.
Yes, I get a lot of requests. I mean, also, I've asked for several letters of rec myself, but I also, because, any leadership position, you're going to get asked for letters of recommendation. So I do have like a specific opinion about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. So why is letters of rec or letters of reference something that's near and dear to your heart?
It's near and dear to my heart, or something I think it's important because it is one of the first impressions that your employer is going to see as they decide whether to ask you over for an interview or whether to invite you to be a part of their staff. It's all of that is really important. First and foremost, you want to make sure that the person you're asking is going to give you a positive recommendation. I've had several, it seems obvious, and maybe you've made some assumptions about the people that you've asked, but I have come across the super awkward situations where an interview has gone really well, and then I go to check out the letters of recommendation or the references, and they don't check out. And I was one step away from hiring that person, and I can only take what I'm hearing from the LEC writer and then the letters of recommendation. So it's important that you're actually asking someone that knows and has substantial knowledge about your skill set, who you are, both professionally, maybe a little bit personally, but maybe mostly professionally, which brings me to my next point. My next point is you really want to have alignment between your documents. So for example, in most jobs, you have a resume or like an online resume or an actual resume that you submit into a school district. You might have some essay questions. But the district is looking for very specific qualifications, and you want there to be alignment between your resume, your your cover letter and your letters of recommendation. So whatever they're calling out in the specific job position, whatever keywords they're using, whatever specifics they want, you want to make sure that you're using those same keywords in all the documents you're submitting for that job.
That when you're talking about, look at the job description. What skills do you have that match that job description? And make sure you're highlighting that in the resume, in the cover letter, and including that job description to whoever is going to be writing that letter of recommendation for you. Because from getting requests to write letters of recommendation, you get requests for a summer camp or a graduate school or teaching, like a first-year teacher. And so knowing, instead of just writing, hey, can you write me a letter of recommendation? Hey, can you tell me more about this? Because it can be so varied as to why you're writing that letter and how to ask for it as well. So as a new graduate, who are some people that they can be asking for letters of recommendation, remembering that you want one that's a positive professional letter of recommendation?
Their student teacher supervisor is someone that knows about their skill set specifically in the classroom. You want to ask someone who is seeing you in action address challenges and then find solutions to those challenges. Like someone that knows who you are as a teacher. They don't need to know. I mean, pre-service teaching, when you're doing your student teaching, you're learning, but there are going to be instances where things come up and you want to ask someone that has seen you in action. So your student teacher supervisor, any professors you've had for several classes. I think for me, it's hard to write a letter of recommendation if I've only had a student for one class. Yeah, and if you don't have a lot of people, like, you might ask your supervisor, you might ask a professor, but then maybe you ask someone that you had a job with previously that may have known you for more than 1 or 2 years, so that you have a variety of like letter of recommendation submissions. So it isn't just people that have known you for a couple of months, but here's someone that's known me for a long time. In my past job, it might not be related to teaching, but this person can vouch for areas of like responsibility and resilience and that kind of stuff.
I like that. So a former employer or a current employer, if it's someone who you've worked with over many years, 1 or 2 years, a college supervisor for student teaching, your mentor teacher, your student teacher mentor. So whenever we're asking for those letters of recommendation, what is a good strategy to ask in a professional way? Would you be willing to write a letter of recommendation for me? What are some things that we need to include, maybe in an email or in a phone conversation that we're having with somebody, asking them for a letter of recommendation?
I think it's always important to be polite.
Yes.
Accommodating. I think one of the things that you mentioned, Sam, in your post was make sure that you give ample time for the person to write the recommendation letter.
Yes.
Any opportunity you have to network with people in leadership positions is good, because you don't want the first contact that you have with someone to be asking them and requesting a letter of recommendations. Being intentional about developing those relationships, when you reach out to that person, either on the phone or through email, you also need to be aware that that person probably has a lot on their to-do list, and your letter of recommendation, it's very important and it's probably urgent in your mind. It's not going to be that for the person you're asking for.
Right. Yeah. And I would, again, give them, like, I would say 2 weeks minimum, a month would be better. If you can include the description of the job that you're applying for in that correspondence, and an updated resume is always good to review. If you have a digital portfolio, pop that link in there. So when I'm writing that letter, I can be very informed and know what you've been up to. It might be a year since I've seen you, so I don't know what you've been up to. Having that information is really helpful when writing that letter. And you might also want to put in there, if they're just asking for references, that's something different than ask for, would I be able to put you down as a reference? And sometimes that's just like a name, email, phone number, address type situation, which is fine. Again, include like what you're applying for. So if we get a phone call from somebody, we know what it's about. That's always good. Would you mind talking about the difference between those two?
Well, a letter of recommendation is an actual document that, whoever you've asked has to write up. It does have a specific structure. It's usually no longer than a page. I always put my contact information on there. I sign it. It is more of an official document. A reference that you might put on a resume, it kind of serves some of the same purpose. My phone number's on there. I've been called when I do agree to that. I am often called. And it's usually a school administrator reaching out and wants to know very specific things about an applicant and whether they'd be a good fit for that specific institution. And so in both instances, I do have to know a significant amount about the person that I am referencing.
Mm-hmm.
And if the administrator asks me for something, asks me a question and I don't have a clear example or clear information, then I have to say, I can't really speak to that. I don't know that the applicant that you're referring to. So, kind of reaffirming the whole idea, you really want to pick people that know about you in a professional sense, because that's what they're going to be speaking to in these documents and on a phone call.
So we talked about who to ask, how to ask, what to include in an email to ask for that letter of recommendation. Are there any other tips that you have for our student teachers? I'm thinking there are a lot of student teachers watching this live right now about letters of recommendations or asking for a reference. And maybe, I always tell my student teachers, maybe try to go for 3 to 5 different letters of recommendations or references that show a variety of work, and maybe start collecting that throughout your college career. So if you've had field experience that was like half a semester or something like that, ask for a recommendation or ask for a letter. When you're asking for that letter of recommendation, tell them where it's going to be used. So for example, are you going to put it on your digital portfolio as a tab? Here are my letters of recommendation. Because if you do that, you're going to want to protect the person's privacy. Maybe just include first name, like first letter of your last name, and maybe their role like teacher, college supervisor, because you don't want to put like their address, their phone number, their email on your digital portfolio. You can keep that content because there's creepers out there.
No, that's a great point. I did not even think about that, Sam. That's a really good point.
I think sometimes if it's down between like 2 or 3 people, I think sometimes those letters of recommendations and calling the references, is where like it hits, I should probably look at those. All right, Heather, do you have any other tips or strategies for our listeners?
I would just say stick with it. I know looking for a job and, all of this process is can be a struggle sometimes, and you can feel a little bit discouraged, but, just stick with it. I entered into the profession when there was a huge, teacher surplus. There were like all these teachers. And I remember I interviewed at 9 different schools before I got one offer. And that was the offer that was the school that was meant for me.
Interviews are hard, but I would say celebrate the small wins along the way. So if you apply to 5 schools today, celebrate that. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's huge.
Update your digital portfolio. Celebrate along the way.
Yeah, and just kind of just piggybacking off of that is like every interview that you do is practice for the next interview. Like you do have to. It takes a while to get your talking points down. It takes a while for you to feel, for you to come across as confident and articulate about what you're trying to communicate. And so it's all part of the process.
Thank you so much, Heather, for joining me today.
Sam. I love that. Take care.
Bye.
And there you have it, EduMagicians. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with your friends. For more EduMagic, check out sfessage.com and follow Dr. Sam on Twitter and Instagram @sfessage. Until next time, you have the EduMagic within you.